Welcome to the Washington Heights Church podcast. We're so glad you're here. Each week, we bring you the latest Sunday message filled with God's Word to help strengthen your faith and deepen your walk with Christ. Whether you're tuning in from home, your commute, or anywhere in between, we're thrilled to have you join our community. So, grab a cup of coffee, find a cozy spot, and let's get started.
Welcome to the 11 o'clock service here at Washington Heights. So glad that you're with us, whether you're here in person or you're watching online. Thanks for joining us. And we mentioned online, and there are individuals who tune in. There are also some different groups, and not far from here, there's a retirement community called Trio, and there's a group of people who gather every Sunday to watch. Can we just welcome them in today as well? They can hear you. And we're so glad that you guys have joined us as well. If you're new here today or we've never had the opportunity to say hi, can I invite you to do something as soon as the service is over? Just off the platform here, my wife Sally and I will be there. We would love to spend just a couple minutes with you, say hi to you. We know it's a big room, there's a lot of people here, but we want this to feel like home, to know each other on a first name basis. So please stop by. We promise we won't keep you very long. So today we are beginning a new series that is based in an Old Testament book called Proverbs. And here's the hope over the next number of weeks, that we will all wise up in all kinds of different ways, because Proverbs is dedicated to gaining and understanding and applying wisdom to real life. And so that just, invited me to begin and start us off here with that age-old question: why do people do dumb things all the time? A couple examples. This is from a book called 176 Stupidest Things Ever Done. R.V. Dartnell of DeRidder, Louisiana, was foiled in his robbery attempt because he forgot to cut holes in his black plastic bag he put over and tied around his head as a disguise. So keep that in mind. Another thief, Bob Coleman, had a different problem. He could see through his garbage bag disguise. So could everybody else, because he was wearing a transparent garbage bag on his head. And then just one more, there are many. A man in Portland, Maine was arrested for driving a classic Thunderbird with a TV set welded to his hood. I mean, nothing, is better than running some errands and watching the game, right, at the same time. So let me, just by show of hands, because I think it's not just people out there, might be some people in here too. How many people, me included, show of hands, you would admit you've done something dumb in your life? Can I see your hands? If you're not raising your hand, the rest of us don't believe you, okay? I think this is one of those all skate kind of moments here. So how do we wise up, and what in the world does the Bible and God have to teach us about that? Well, let me just show you this claim right off the bat here in Proverbs. The beginning of wisdom is this: get wisdom, understand its value, and make a commitment to go in that direction. Though it costs you all you have, get understanding. So this is more than knowledge, it's more than information, it's more than just kind of define where lines are in life. It is applying truth to life in ways that are beneficial. Cherish her, she will exalt you, embrace her, and she will honor you. And we go, well, that sounds kind of weird. They're talking about wisdom in the feminine, and it's exactly right. Wisdom is personified throughout the book of Proverbs, given human characteristics. And in Proverbs, it's always put in the context of a beautiful woman. And we'll talk about why that is in just a moment. But the invitation is to come and to learn and to understand and also to apply, so that you live in a way that is full of wisdom. But where are we in today's culture? We look at this and we go, those words were written, and everything in the book of Proverbs was written about 3,000 years ago in a different culture. And so what about today? And wisdom is one of those things that never goes out of style. It is always relevant. And so when we look at today's culture, many have described it this way: we live in a pluralistic day. What does that mean? Plural, you hear that, right? It means more than one. And so when we look at our culture and the direction in which people give us an indication we should go, there's not just one answer to that. There are a number of different ways in which we can go. And if I was going to try to simplify that a little bit so we could understand it, maybe put it in 2 columns, it might go like this, that there's morality and principles and what we believe is right. Now, is that really important? Yes, it is. Is it everything for every situation and every circumstance and every person? On the other side is knowledge and science and what is true. Are those things really important? Absolutely they are. But here's what happens in our day. We're kind of being pushed to those extremes. And oftentimes we can define ourselves entirely by one side or the other, one column or the other. And here's the reality. We can maybe be somebody of great knowledge and trust science and believe what is true and totally commit ourselves to that. And we can have a really high IQ, but maybe we have a really low EQ. You know what EQ is? Emotional intelligence quotient, where sometimes we can't read the room. And we don't understand things really well in the way that they play out. But on the other side, we can say, and especially I think in a church environment, we go, well, morality is good. And you know what? There's a real sense in which that is true. But if we think that life always operates by these lines, we're going to wind up in moments in which those lines are not clearly identified for us. Let me give you a couple examples. Should I date that person? Should I marry that person? What should I do in this circumstance? Should I confront that person? Is now the time to do that? And there's some things that are just not clearly black and white all the time. And as we go along here, I want you to understand one thing with absolute clarity. The things that God has drawn clear moral boundaries around, we're not talking about those being up for grabs. So the Bible, for instance, says that adultery is always wrong. And so sometimes, through the years, I've heard people say something like this, well, God brought somebody else into my life, and now we're happy, but it led to the divorce of my spouse. Can I just say this, with clarity? God did not do that, because God has already weighed in on that issue. So we're not talking about, some of those lines that are clearly defined. But wouldn't you agree that sometimes in life there is not a clear, identifiable way in which we know we're supposed to go? And so what do? And if we just live on one side or the other of these 2 columns here, we may lack wisdom. And the opposite of wisdom in the book of Proverbs, you know what it is? Is being foolish. And we can be wise and we can be foolish. You can be incredibly intelligent and still wreck your life and bring about chaos and blow the whole thing up because of a lack of wisdom. You can be committed to morality and all the lines and being right all the time, and you can blow up your life and bring chaos and make it a train wreck. So what do we need? What do we need that transcends all of this? And Proverbs calls it wisdom, which is knowing what is true and knowing what is right and applying it in the right ways and at the right time. And that's what wisdom is all about. And that's what the book of Proverbs is all about. And there is really in recorded history, the belief that Proverbs was this manual for young men who were in a school that combined spiritual life and regular life. And it was a manual trying to give young men direction for how they can live their life with the maximum level of effectiveness and influence and honor. And so if we wonder, well, as we get started, why wisdom? What is so important about it? Let me show you a couple things that wisdom claims to do for us. Choose my instruction instead of silver, knowledge rather than choice gold, for wisdom is more precious than rubies, and nothing you desire can compare with her. And then now notice this progression as it goes through here. Long life is in her right hand. Remember, personified. Wisdom is being given human attributes here, a woman's attributes. And so long life is in her hands. There are actually studies that show that if you include a spiritual commitment like you are doing right now, on average, you will live 6.5 years longer than people who do not. Don't you feel so much healthier here as you're expending your lifespan here with us? In her left hand are riches. And oh man, if that wasn't in this verse, I would not mention it, because here's one of my least favorite things in the world is when people who do what I do and are in an arena like this, they kind of use God as a get rich quick kind of scheme. And that's just not true. But here is God saying that there can be a benefit in the arena of our resources. And, each week we're going to look at each of these things that we're going to highlight here, and that there is an opportunity to gain riches. Why? Because we do not squander things. So there's wisdom even about the resources that we have at our disposal. And not only is it riches, but also honor. Why would people show greater honor? Maybe because if we exercise wisdom, there's less moments in which we put our foot into our own mouth. And her ways are pleasant ways. Pleasant has the idea of relationships, that we have an agreeable manner of relationships with each other. We're going to spend a week at least looking at relationships and friendships and things like that. And all her paths are peace. This is that inner peace of soul and mind, the kind when you lay your head on the pillow at the end of the night, you can do it with great relief rather than the ongoing angst that keeps us up about all the things that we can maybe turn over in our life. She, wisdom, is a tree of life to those who take hold of her. Those who hold her fast will be, and here's a promise from God, that they will be blessed. We say, okay, there are a lot of benefits to it. There are those, and each week we're going to look at one of those and a whole lot more. But what actually is it? If we were going to try to define it, what does wisdom actually mean, and what does it look like? For that, let's go to Proverbs chapter 8, beginning in verse 12. I, wisdom, again speaking in the first person, dwell together with prudence. Boy, how many times do we use the word prudence? I would say 0. So what exactly are you talking about? That Hebrew word there for prudence has the ability to understand the distinctions of minute details, being able to see things for what they really are. And I don't know if this is a great example or not, but I like watching a show called Dateline. I've probably seen every one of those that's ever been put out. It's always the spouse, by the way, who does things. But somebody will walk into a room and something happened there, and there's just stuff strewn all over the place, and it looks like chaos, and it looks like disarray. And all of a sudden you get these detectives that come in and they begin to piece the parts together, and they unfold this story that ultimately tells them what happened there. And wisdom is saying, when you look at life, wisdom gives you the ability not just to see random events, not random circumstances, not random people, but be able to see things for what they truly are. That is what prudence means. I possess knowledge and discretion, counsel and sound judgment are mine. I have insight. And the word for insight has the idea of understanding the way that things really work. Not just what they are, but now how they work, what their purpose is, how to mend them, how to fix them, how to get them working in the way that they were originally intended and designed to work. I have power by me, kings reign and rulers issue decrees that are just. What is just? That means doing things that are right in the right way at the right time. So what is wisdom? It is this amazing collection that says how things really work, how things really are, and what to do about them. Is there anybody who could use any of that in their life as life unfolds? I don't know about you, but give me wisdom, because there's so many moments in which it just looks like, okay, where's the line here? I can't just live by the line. There are some ways in which I need to apply what is right. And if I just go by truth and say, well, the science and knowledge side doesn't often answer the question of ethics, so do I just make it up as I go along? And I can be a relativistic fool. I can be a morality-focused fool. But wisdom is what brings all of that together, of doing what is right and doing what is true and doing it in the right way at the right time. Gerhard von Rad is this Lutheran pastor who said these words: "Wisdom is becoming competent to the realities of life." And man, that's good news. And the invitation on the part of wisdom, speaking in the first person, "I am wisdom, come to me and gain wisdom and understanding." But here's the thing, if it were that easy and if it were so simple, wouldn't we all get there? But we all raised our hand pretty much when it came to doing dumb things. So why is it that wisdom is so elusive? What makes it so difficult to just see things for what they are and understand how they work and then do something about them that fits that definition of wisdom? Now, all of Proverbs is in the form of Hebrew poetry. And poetry is, a challenge for us, even in our own language. Here's some that comes from another culture, in another language, and yet there is such a imagery and picture around here that is powerful and something that we need to let sink into our hearts and souls. Proverbs 8:23, "I was formed long ago." This again is wisdom speaking in the first person. Long ages ago, at the very beginning when the world came to be. So here is wisdom saying, I'm just woven into the whole pattern and fabric of everything that was made. The universe as we know it, humanity, that wisdom is part of what took place even at the very beginning. It was right there from the start. "I was filled with delight day after day, rejoicing always in his presence, rejoicing in his whole world and delighting in mankind." And when you look at the Bible's account of why there is something rather than nothing and how it came to be and the creation account, it is unique in all the world. And let me tell you why. You go the world over and there's so many different examples of this. Creation accounts play out something like this. There was a power struggle or a conflict amongst the gods, small g, G-O-D-S. And that power struggle and that conflict led to chaos and to warfare. And almost by accident, and because there was an attempt to try to marshal more resources to win this power struggle, the world was created and humanity was created to serve the purposes of the gods. But it came out of conflict, it came out of chaos. The Bible alone says, no, that's not it at all. That there was an all-powerful God who was behind all of it. And he put intelligence and design and purpose into all of it. And it all matters to him. And he didn't do it because there was a power struggle, because there's no one like him. And it wasn't because there was a conflict. Instead, he wanted to share the heart of God with the heart of humanity. And so he created, and he created even at the beginning with wisdom. And what that means, because it is woven into the very fabric of all of creation, the world around us and also the human heart. People who studied the Bible and this account of what it was like even at the very beginning said, well, if there is a pattern and there is a God behind it who brings intelligence and reason to it, maybe we can study it and understand it even better. And so many of the early scientists were people who believed this version of that account, and they began to discover that, there are principles. You ever heard of something called physics? And we look at the world around us and we say, well, gravity is a real thing, and here's how gravity works. And we can put together a big piece of metal, put enough thrust in some engines, and we can get that piece of metal to take off, and it can transport people over long distances really, really fast. And if you follow the pattern of physics, it'll fly. And if you don't, it's not going to fly. And it was actually people who leaned into this understanding of what the Bible says is woven into even us being here. But then there were people who didn't just look at it from a scientific level. They also said, well, if there are patterns in nature and in the world around us, there are probably also patterns in relationships and the ways that people can engage and relate to each other. And they began to study that as well. And wisdom is woven into the very fabric of who we are and why we are here. And so the book of Proverbs tries to reveal a lot of that to us. So let me give you a little bit of a breakdown of the book of Proverbs. Chapter 1 through 9 is defining wisdom. What does it look like? What are we talking about? 10 to 15 are some basic principles of wisdom. Some of those patterns that are woven in, some of those tried and true principles of life that typically apply. For example, it says if you work really hard, you're going to do okay. If you're lazy, you're going to wind up in trouble. And there are just these observations. Some are pretty obvious. Some we go, well, I knew that. And some other ones are like, well, that's new information for me. And then in the last part of it, in chapter 16 through 31, there are exceptions to the principles. Have you ever noticed that life is not real simple? And that sometimes the things that seem like they should work don't always work. And again, think of those two columns. Sometimes we think it's always about being right and finding out where the line is. Well, there are a lot of things where the line isn't as clearly defined. And even if we stick to the lines, we may not engage and treat people right. So we may be right on the issue and we may be wrong in the application. But then on the other side, we can make a commitment to knowledge and understanding and all of that and have no moral or ethical direction at all. And we can become a relativistic fool. We can be a moralistic fool. And what Proverbs includes with us is, look, if you just think it's all about defining lines, you're not understanding the application part. And if you think it's all just about doing whatever you want, you're missing that there is a pattern woven into the fabric of the world and humanity. And so in the last part of Proverbs, you get things like this that seem so contradictory. Answer a fool according to his folly. And that is followed immediately by a next part that says, don't answer a fool according to his folly. Well, would you make up your mind? Which one is it? And the answer is sometimes it depends. Sometimes it depends on the person. Sometimes it depends on the situation. Have you noticed that if you think that the world operates like some machine, that it's way more complex than that? And if you think it's all about, just finding boundaries and living inside of those boundaries, that there's a little bit more application that's needed? For example, maybe, Proverbs talks about, families and raising up children. And sometimes great people raise great kids. Sometimes great people see kids go off the rails. There's just not a formulaic approach to that. Sometimes kids grow up in chaos and reproduce chaos. Sometimes kids grow up in chaos and they reproduce something entirely different and produce something great. That life just isn't as simple as we would like for it to be. And it seems like the ancients understood that a little bit better than we moderns do. Because what we often do is become reductionistic and we oversimplify things. But Proverbs is not going to let us off that hook very easily. It's going to invite us to think about some of the subtleties of life and not just come to simple formulaic approaches, but to instead be wise. Now, when you look at the world around us, there are many different ways in which wisdom is calling out to us. Many different people claim to give us wisdom. In fact, if you Google books on wisdom, there are over 300,000 different books out there claiming to give us wisdom. Can I share just a couple of them with you? Here's one, The Wisdom of Jerry Garcia of the Grateful Dead fame. I don't know, I guess this is about how to tie-dye a shirt. I'm not sure. There's The Wisdom of Michael Jordan. In my opinion, the greatest basketball player who's ever played, but he pushed off in Game 7 against the Jazz, and you will not change my mind. Then there is The Wisdom of Clint Eastwood, Ben and Jerry's of ice cream fame, Keith Richards, the Rolling Stones, Bruce Lee, Phineas and Ferb, that's a cartoon, in case you're not sure, Dave Marinaccio, the title of his book, and he's absolutely serious about this, Everything I Know I Learned from Watching Star Trek. And then I'll share one more with you, and that is The Wisdom of Cats. That book is blank, in case you know, so don't buy that, and no wisdom to be found there. So a lot of different claims to wisdom, but then there's God's invitation to gain wisdom from the one who put it there from the very beginning, and the one who made you, and the one who invites you to experience life, not just living in our man-made sort of categories, but living life with wisdom. Now, wisdom is pictured a couple of ways in the book of Proverbs, and I think those images are really important for us to understand. Here's one of the images. Wisdom is pictured like a path. And we have a lot of paths around here. We often call them trails. It's the same idea. What do you do on a path, right? It is not, hey, if I'm standing here at the bottom and I want to get to the top of that mountain here, let me just take one giant step, right? It is a bunch of steps, and we take one after another, and before you know it, after a period of time, we get somewhere. If you're looking for a quick fix, wisdom is not in that arena. Because wisdom is a slow progression in a direction that over time, doing the things that wisdom invites us to do, it allows us to gain wisdom as time goes on. Now, I don't know about you. I can remember plenty of times in my life where, I wasn't thinking a whole lot about God. All of a sudden, an emergency comes up, right? And it's like, God, is a 911 call. Would you show up and bail me out of this? And, there are many times God is gracious with that. But wisdom is making a commitment on a regular basis to move in the direction of God's calling. Let me give you one example of how you can do this and apply this. We're big fans here of reading the Bible, and we're through the year in a reading plan right now, and I'm doing that as well, and I hope you are. But if you're not, or maybe if you want to add something into addition, there's a pastor friend that I have, and he's made a commitment for years now. Proverbs has 31 chapters. That is the same amount of days as half of our months. And so what he does in a month is he will read one chapter of Proverbs every day. And so on the first, he's on the first chapter of Proverbs. On the 16th of a month, he's on chapter 16. And maybe even during this series, you want to make a commitment, because it's just taking a step on a regular daily basis in the direction of gaining wisdom. This is not a microwave thing. This is more like a crock pot thing, where it's got to simmer and soak. And oh man, it's so much better when we get there with the crock pot. And wisdom is so much better than just having an answer to a specific question in a moment. That's good too. But wisdom is a whole way of viewing life the way that God intended for it to be lived. So one of the images of wisdom is a path. The other, and was careful about how I portrayed this, is wisdom is a beautiful woman. And why would they portray it as a beautiful woman? Remember, this was a manual for young men, and so I think that was relevant to them, that you are going to have these attractions in life that are going to lead you in one direction or another. Now, wisdom is portrayed as a beautiful woman. You know what else is? Seduction. And so in Proverbs, you'll find that there are two beautiful women, and they're both attractive. And what a great picture of life, right? That we can be attracted in one direction will lead us toward life, another is going to lead us toward destruction. And we got to be really discerning about which one that we are pursuing. And so, as wisdom is personified and often put in the first person voice of a woman, we see that it's taking us beyond just saying, hey, you just got to know some stuff. You got to memorize some stuff. Just get some stuff inside of your head. No, it is way more relational and subtle than all of that. Wisdom has built her house. She has set up its 7 pillars. She has sent out her servants, and she calls from the highest point of the city, let all who are simple come to my house. To those who have no sense, she says, come, eat my food and drink my wine I have mixed. That surprise you at all, that wisdom says, come drink my wine? Because I think, especially in the arena where we would lean maybe naturally in the direction of morality, we might think, well, I thought wisdom's voice would sound a lot more like a drill sergeant. This is what you do, this is what you don't do, drop and give me 50. But instead, wisdom here is pictured as a beautiful woman inviting someone to come and to experience all that is found in that presence and to experience life the way it was meant to be. But here's the difficult thing. Seduction can look and sound exactly the same. And it's really hard for us just in and of ourselves to make the right call on that. All the more reason we are invited to lean into the direction that God has given to us. But wisdom is not just memory work. Here, memorize this stuff. Just get this stuff, and make sure that you can recite it. Wisdom is pictured more as relational pursuit. And maybe if we can't understand really what that is like, let me invite you to think back maybe to the first time you fell in love. And you saw that person and you thought about that person and you did things for that person. And it was not draining and it was not mechanical and it was not something that wore you out. Man, it felt like you were more alive. And wisdom is pictured that way. As something that invites you in and is not inviting you to wear you out, but to bring more life to you. But here's the thing. So wisdom is pictured and personified as a woman, as a person, speaking in the first person. And wisdom invites us to come. But what if that's not just poetry? What if that's not just a way to picture this? What if that was foreshadowing not just something, but someone? What if one day God would bring this wisdom into this world, not in some sort of, principle form, but in actual form that we could see it and we could hear it and we could understand it, what it would look like in real life? Well, here's what it says in John chapter 1. In the beginning was the Word. And the word there is this idea of the power, the intellect, and the wisdom that is infused in creation. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He, and we come to find out, this is speaking about Jesus. He was with God in the beginning. Through him, all things were made. Without him, nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. What if, ultimately, in a full and final sense, God would bring not a picture, not a personification, but a person who would be the full understanding and the full manifestation of what wisdom looks like. More and more I meet people who have, no experience with church or the Bible. And here's my encouragement to you, and maybe even if you have some experience with that, spend some time looking at Jesus. Hear what he has to say, see what he does with people, and I guarantee you, no matter where you come from, if you lean on that morality side or you lean on the truth side, there are going to be surprises there for you, because he was the ultimate expression of God's wisdom. The Apostle Paul called Jesus the wisdom of God. And so my question to you is a commitment. Will you make a commitment to pursuing wisdom? Because Jesus is the wisdom of God in the flesh. It's what wisdom really looks like and sounds like in the real world. And sometimes people are saying, if you could just give me an airtight argument for the existence of God, I would believe. If there is a God, why doesn't he just come down and make himself known to us? Because if he did, then I would believe. And he did. And Jesus is that expression. Jesus is the airtight argument of the existence of God, because he is God in the flesh. And if you want to see what wisdom looks like, look at Jesus. And that's why here we talk about what's our mission: helping people meet and follow, not Washington Heights and not somebody up here with a microphone, helping people meet and follow Jesus, because he is the one for whom we were made. So Jesus is the wisdom of God in the flesh, to you and for you and with you. It was God sending that to you so you could see it, so that you could know it's personal and has every bit to do with you and your relationship with him. And in a relationship with him, you are never without him. He has made a commitment to always be with you. So what are we going to see over the next number of weeks as we explore what Proverbs has to say? Wisdom is not just answers to questions. It's a way. It's a way of life. It's a way of seeing life. It's a way of understanding how even our understanding comes to us. It is a way of living life with the right thing in the right way at the right moment. And God has made that available to us. Would you bow your heads together with me? And I'm going to invite you to stand with me as well as we close here. But just before I pray, let me ask you this question. Do you know him? Do you know the wisdom of God that has come in the flesh? Do you know Jesus? He was the Word from the beginning. He was with God and was God. And we were made by him and for him. Have you put your hope and your trust in him? Have you said yes to the love of God and the invitation to come and grow in wisdom? So, Lord Jesus, thank you for who you are, and thank you for the opportunity to understand how precious and valuable these lives of ours are and how we can live them with increasing amounts of wisdom that ultimately bring honor and glory to your name. And so we thank you for your grace, for your love. God, thank you for your patience as we're on a learning curve, learning how to become more and more wise. And thank you so much for so many gifts along the way. And so we ask and pray all of this in the powerful name of Jesus. Amen.
We hope you enjoyed today's message. If you found this sermon meaningful, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your support helps us reach more people and spread the word. Stay connected with us throughout the week by following us on social media at Washington Heights Church on Facebook and Instagram, and by visiting our website at whc.faith. For more information and additional resources, check out the podcast description below. Thank you for joining us. See you next week.